So many big stories. President Trump continues to call for the arrest of top Democrats, including Obama, Hillary Clinton. He says he regrets not doing this last time and that it is time to officially drain the swamp. Also, President Trump points out how many members of Congress have been serving for too long and how we need term limits and a new census. To help me go through all this, I have a special guest, Trent Staggs. Trent, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, great to be with you, Stephen.
So we had you on before. Trent is a top Republican here in Utah. He is a super pro-MAGA mayor. He also ran for Congress and will hopefully run again down the road. President Trump is starting to put out memes. He put out a video of Barack Obama being arrested. He did an interview earlier this week where he said he regretted not going after Hillary Clinton. He thought that was the kind thing to do. And then look at what they did to him. Now, today, he's putting out, until this happens, nothing will change. He wants to see James Comey, John Brennan, Clapper, McCabe, Hillary Clinton, Obama. He says these people have to go to jail. And I put out yesterday that if criminals aren't held accountable, then their crimes are just repeated. What are your thoughts on all this information coming out? And is it time to actually start arresting people?
Yeah, I mean, this is it's unbelievable, right? The amount of information that has been coming out over the last few weeks. Tulsi Gabbard, DNI, Director of National Intelligence, coming out and just essentially saying that the level of corruption reached all the way to the top. And I'm with you 100%. I mean, the accountability has to be there. That's what put President Trump in office. This amazing, charismatic leader that cares about the average American and wanting to bring some accountability back to government, get the swamp, the establishment creatures out. That's why I was so proud to have his endorsement in the U.S. Senate campaign last year. I'm proud to be serving in his administration today within the Small Business Administration and trying to cut out all regulation. But that's exactly the case. We've got to have accountability. These folks have to do time in order for just the credibility to be brought back. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the polling data recently that just illustrates that faith and belief in institutions here in America is at an all-time low, Stephen. And I think this is the reason why, because we have rules for thee, but not for me. And even worse than that, we see the politicization and the weaponization of Department of Justice and other federal agencies to go after, as they clearly did, President Trump.
Yeah, I was shocked. I've been saying, okay, I think they're going to drag Obama through the mud. I think that they are going to humiliate him, try to ruin his presidential pristine record. I think all of that's going to happen. But then one of the top lawyers in America, David Schoen, he actually came out this week and said, I don't know that you can get Obama on treason, but you could certainly get him on seditious conspiracy, especially if he did even one single thing after office. Then they could impeach him and go after him. I don't know that we will. I'm going to stand by. I don't know that we'll actually get him, but I do believe that they could get John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, even Hillary Clinton. It's time to finally open the investigation that James Comey refused to do as he was trying to rig the election against Donald Trump. I think it would do the American people well to see some of these faces put behind bars.
Well, absolutely. And, you might be right with respect to Obama and the level of immunity that he may have. Although I believe personally, you shouldn't have, the hard time I have with this is that they have sworn an oath, right? To preserve, protect, defend the Constitution of the United States. That oath should mean something. I mean, even down to the mayoral level where I serve today, we've had to take an oath. That's that same oath to support, obey, and defend the Constitution. And if we're acting seditiously like this and in a treasonous way, which I believe that this is, they are not upholding that oath, and there should be definitely accountability for that. We have got to get back to a place where the credibility and faith in these institutions is restored. And the only way to do that, again, in my view, is to have some serious consequences and repercussions for information that we're seeing just plainly coming out today, that this went all the way to the top. I mean, they knew that the intelligence agencies really knew that this wasn't credible at all. It didn't even meet their own standard for disclosing this type of intelligence out there. Yet they went ahead and crafted and concocted this bogus narrative so it could weigh down, if not completely, weigh down President Trump's first term, if not completely try to remove him from office.
Yeah. They're saying, oh, Obama might get away with this because of presidential immunity. But that presidential immunity only comes when you are behaving within your office of president, right? Betraying the country, trying to overthrow an election, overthrow the government, that is not part of a president's duty, right? Like we were all agitated that Joe Biden as president was betraying his oath by allowing the United States of America to be overrun by illegal immigrants. How is it any different than Barack Obama conspiring with U.S. intelligence agencies to literally overthrow the government that was properly elected with an actual election that Donald Trump won? I think if they start digging into this, and I think this is why Trump is trying to drip this information out. A couple of weeks ago, nobody was thinking about Obama. Nobody was thinking about crimes or anything. So I think they have to let this stuff, because once it becomes familiar and common, if they make a move, people are going, well, it's been in the media. They might do this for many months. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that he's bringing it to light. This is definitely something that is abhorrent and something that, again, has to have consequence. I think you're right. I think that immunity only has certain, has a certain boundary within it. And I believe that Obama crossed those lines clearly in trying to completely undo the will of the American people that voted in President Trump back in 2016. It was, you have to think back. There's so much going on in the news cycles these days, but you think back to those years, and my goodness, the administration was weighed down so heavily. It was mired in so much. We could have accomplished so much more. You look at what's happened in the first 6 months here in Trump 2 and his second administration. It is phenomenal. I mean, the amount of things he's been able to accomplish. If he didn't have that albatross around him and everybody, every day, the media, combination of the media and of course the Democrats and the progressive left just attacking nonstop, weighing him down, we could have accomplished so much more as a country. And that is what is so disheartening to me, that this has really become, when I ran last year and had great patriots like Tommy Tuberville come out and talk, he said, this is really increasingly becoming American versus anti-American. And we have an establishment swamp that is anti-American, 100% in my view. And that's, they don't care at all about you and I. They only care about amassing power, maintaining power, and doing all that they can to knock people out.
Yeah. A thought that I've been having this last week, Trent, is, before President Trump came in, Dr. Anthony Fauci said there's going to be a surprise pandemic during Trump's administration, right? Then we get mired down in this Russia bullcrap. And right as that's ending, wouldn't you know it, this surprise pandemic comes out of nowhere. Then we find out that Dr. Anthony Fauci illegally funded it, illegally promoted it. I mean, even Obama was like, we can't be doing gain of function research. So what does he do? He offloads it to Ukraine and he offloads it to China. Then we end up in this like media war with China and an actual war with Ukraine. I just think some of this seems like too much of a coincidence. I think it was all to shut Trump down.
Well, I think a lot of what has been going on is definitely a concerted effort. It has been planned. I mean, well, you see it with the intelligence coming out. Um, the operation, what they even had names for it, right? Crossfire Hurricane. They have been planning systemically um, to do all they can to take him down and pursue their own agenda, which is frightening. I'm so grateful that President Trump won in this election, that people stood up, made their voices heard, many of which may not over the years have actively participated in politics, but as they stood forward and said, enough is enough. We can't have this happen to our country anymore. I mean, you talk about Anthony Fauci. There's another person that should be definitely behind bars. That guy should have been removed a long time ago, and he was allowed to continue doing what he was doing. I think Senator Rand Paul has really, had a great takedown of Anthony Fauci and all of the insidious behavior that guy has, perpetrated on the American people.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? He got this magical out of nowhere auto pen pardon that Biden wasn't in the office for, didn't know about. Let me switch gears with you. Right before the 4th of July, just as we wrap up July, there were all these protests. Oh, Donald Trump thinks he's a king. He's a king. In America, we don't have kings. President Trump put out today, he's like, you guys say I'm a king? Look at this. Chuck Grassley, 50 years in government. Joe Biden, 48 years. Chuck Schumer, 44. Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, Bernie Sanders, et cetera, et cetera. Trump's been in for 4 years and 5 months. But, I'm the king. I'm the one that's ruling too long with a heavy hand. What are your thoughts on term limits and what President Trump just pointed out here?
Well, I'm all for term limits, but before I get there, I wish there's one other statistic he could obviously share too, Stephen, which is the net worth of all those individuals before they started in government and when they get to where they are today is unbelievable. There's no way that these folks can amass the type of wealth that they have on what is it? The congressional salary today is $174,000 a year. It's just impossible. We know that there's something going on there. We know that there's trading with respect to early information. We know that there's this revolving door. We know that USAID, there's all kinds of ways for money to be appropriated that you and I are paying or have been indebted now to the tune of $36+ trillion that's going out and cycling back and finding its way into these swamp creatures, these lifetime politicians. And, I got to say that would solve a lot of problems. I'm serving as a mayor. I'm finishing out my 8th year. It's a self-imposed term limit. We don't have term limits here. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is, so to speak, and stepping aside, not seeking reelection here. That's how strongly I believe in it. I've signed the term limits pledge when I ran for Senate last year. That was one of the first things that I did because I truly believe that that is part of the solution. That's an answer to get us back to a place where we have a citizen government. And that's what the founders envisioned. That's what they gave us in 1787. But we've run far afield from that. And the point that was so ridiculous to have this no kings protest and running around. I mean, the true no kings protest, was back in 1776, right? I mean, this is something that if Trump were truly a king, would he have allowed these protests to even occur? And the fact that we had so much violence erupting, I put out a statement personally saying, if any of this nonsense comes to my city, if you are engaged in any sort of protest that turns violent, you'll be arrested on the spot. We're not putting up with it. And I wish we had more even local elected officials that would stand up and take that kind of action and signal to these radical lunatics that there's going to be consequence. Getting back to what we first talked about, there has to be consequence for these actions. And then maybe things would start changing.
Yeah. I asked Alan Dershowitz, the lawyer, about that. He said, it's one thing to use your voice, but when you start locking people in buildings, destroying, like your bad behavior is not freedom of speech, right? So I figured out actually how Nancy Pelosi is such a great trader. It's not insider trading. It's not access to the earliest amount of information. She puts on her little tennis sweater and her pearl necklace, and she gets out a bucket of ice cream and a bottle of gin, and she just kind of blindfolds herself and throws a dart at the wall. And she's like, oh my gosh, I beat Warren Buffett again, the greatest investor of all times. I've beat him again. So we know it wasn't insider trading. But yeah, I mean, Trump makes such a great point. Like these are the people, Mitch McConnell, Biden, Schumer, Pelosi, Sanders. What have they really done for the country other than to enrich themselves? So I want to get your thoughts on this. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's controversial. People either love her, hate her, or are confused by her. But I like many of her ideas. She proposed and briefed President Trump on an idea that I believe would absolutely change the country. She said we need to immediately redo the census. If we do that, the country will see that based on citizens, not bodies, that the country is more red than any of us would have ever guessed. What are your thoughts on what would happen if we did a census and removed all the illegal immigrants?
Well, we have to remove them first. I think President Trump has made a substantial strides in getting criminal illegal immigrants out. We have close to 2 million people that have burdened our system with millions or billions of dollars and going through and getting due process. Their asylum claims have been adjudicated. They've been given deportation orders. They're still here. They're largely in these blue cities and blue states. And I think she's absolutely right. If we were to take a look at that today, because we know that the way they're doing the census today, they are appropriating districts and congressional seats based on just the population. It isn't tied to citizenry. And so I think in a lot of these states, if the numbers were there, taking out upwards of 20 million people in a lot of these jurisdictions, Stephen, you're going to see a huge shift with those 400 in the way in which those 435 congressional seats are actually allocated. I think we need to do it. That's one thing that I've talked about repeatedly. We've got to restore the value of citizenship. It's something I talk about at length in my book. It's that whole concept of citizenship our founders had was that this was a sacred duty, and it wasn't just a legal status or some type of passive entitlement that people would receive. And it's been so cheapened over the years because of many factors, but not the least of which the lack of enforcement of immigration, that we are where we are today. But yeah, that's a huge step in the right direction, is to redo the census and make sure that seats are allocated actually based on legitimate U.S. citizenship representation.
Okay. It's good to get a mayor's perspective. Let me show you what Governor Ron DeSantis had to say, because he specifically goes after California and Florida, which, if you went back and watched their debate between he and Gavin Newsom, it was amazing. But let me show you what he had to say earlier today.
I do that this next census, whether they do it mid-decade, which I know they've considered doing another census, because I think you have to do it once every 10 years. It doesn't mean you can't do it more than every 10 years under the Constitution. They should do it and count people that are legally allowed to be here. How many seats would California lose if you only counted lawful people, citizens? They would lose a lot of seats because they're a sanctuary state. For us, we would stand to gain because we did not spend money to try to count illegals, because I don't think that that's constitutionally proper. That is ultimately going to be resolved by the U.S. Supreme Court, because I do think the Trump administration is going to put in for a census that is not going to count foreign nationals.
All right. So he goes on, but how many seats would California lose? How many seats would Florida pick up? They just redistrict Texas based on population, cities, neighborhoods, new zoning, all of that. Texas is going to pick up 5 Republican seats. I mean, so we've gone along with the Democrats for too long. One thing that I like about Republicans and hate about Republicans is they're too polite. Like you're showing up with your fists to a gunfight. And I think President Trump has shown a lot of Republicans how to fight back. But I mean, the whole country would change. I think we would see that this country is way more conservative and way more red than any of us would ever guess.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And, if you just look at the numbers, 20 million people potentially, that are here illegally. I know in our state of Utah, we have 4 congressional seats, right? 6 electoral votes. And it's on average about 750 to 800,000 people that each one represents. And so if you just extrapolate that out, and there's a good possibly 20 plus seats, right? That are being represented, that are representing essentially just illegal immigrants, with that many numbers. And that's absurd. I mean, we shouldn't be, the representation should be based on, I agree with Governor DeSantis there. It should be based on a citizenship status. We wouldn't be counting foreign diplomats into the population set of a given congressional seat in the area. So that's absurd. It should just be U.S. citizenry based. And in doing that, I agree with you wholeheartedly. We're going to find that a lot more seats go to the Republican side of the aisle. And you're right. I've been critical of my own party, just as you have, with respect to just kind of this teddy bear type of attitude, right? We've got the Democrats always play hardball. And whenever they're in power, they use that power and try to wield it as much as they can. And we have all 3 branches of the government at this point, or excuse me, the presidency, the House, and the Senate. And we need to be able to take advantage of that. I love what's going on in Texas. And I love the thought of having a census right now and just counting only U.S. citizens.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right. Senator Cory Booker lost his mind. He's losing his mind about Donald Trump.
That's a daily occurrence.
He's losing his mind about his own party. Democrats literally have no path forward. They're at the lowest polling they've ever been. They are not trusted. They have no good ideas. Whatever the 80-20 policy is, they're like, you know what? We're going to lean into the 20. The things that people care the least about is where we're going to put the most amount of effort. Let me show you this clip of him having a meltdown, and then we'll discuss it together.
Charlie, I have to play this for you. This has happened yesterday on the Senate floor. This is Senator Cory Booker as the Democratic Civil War. It's now well out in the open.
You gotta be kidding me. When will we stand and fight this president? Our president is eviscerating the Constitution of the United States of America. I see businesses taking late-night talk show hosts off the air because they dare to insult a president. That is complicity with an authoritarian leader who is trashing our Constitution. It's time for Democrats to have a backbone. It's time for us to fight. It's time for us to draw lines.
I'm only laughing. He was a little unhinged yesterday.
Yeah, he was. And what's really amazing is that's a bill that came out of the Judiciary Committee unanimously. And you know who sits on the Judiciary Committee?
I do.
Cory Booker. So he's falling apart over a bill that he did not object to in committee, which is kind of how the process works, Spartacus. Look, we spent a lot of time talking about the problems in the Democrat Party, and they're pretty obvious. I think they're much worse than we even realize. And I think that this he's obviously trying to posture himself as being sort of the loudest, most, ardent opponent of Donald Trump. And he doesn't think any of his colleagues are doing a good enough job at it. And so he wants to fill that void but it becomes kind of ridiculous. And then what you wind up doing is attacking your colleagues, which he spent much of that time on the floor attacking his own Democrat colleagues. And it's going to get uglier before they find their way.
All right. Losing his mind. I think they make a great point. Like, He also didn't bring any good ideas. At this point, he's just the loudest. He's the guy yelling the most. But I thought it was interesting that he said, I can't believe I live in a country where they're taking late night talk show hosts off for being critical of a president. Stephen Colbert's show was losing $40 million a year. And what? They're supposed to keep him on so that he can badmouth a president? Like, if your show isn't good enough, it should be removed. Your thoughts on Cory Booker's baby tantrum?
Well, it's all for show. It's all, it's all theater. I think best case scenario, this guy is just cognitively impaired. Worst case scenario, he's just wittingly dishonest, completely and utterly dishonest. And it's disgusting. Most people see through it. It's like you were saying, the 80-20. That's why Democrats, I think they have, a 16% favorability rating right now, or something lower. Americans are tired of the theatrics like that, complete dishonest litany of nonsense that he spews. And then, as you indicated, there's no solution. It's just riotous, type of speech. And the guy even voted for this, as they pointed out. And to take somebody off of late night, this guy, he needs to go back to school and understand what, just an Econ 101 class, a class on capitalism. He clearly doesn't understand it, because, this is much more to do with a business decision than it had anything to do with the nonsense that Stephen Colbert, would spout.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know why CBS doesn't just print more money like us, hey, in the real world, Mr. Booker, we have to actually make a profit or we go under, right? So now, Trent, if I was a dirty, dishonest trickster like the Democrats, I would say, look at him making the Adolf Hitler Nazi sign. Oh, this is a guy making the Hitler sign. Like, they're so pathetic. And as you correctly pointed out, they don't really have a solution. But I want to point out one, it's so stupid. I don't see why they don't pick up on this, right? So Donald Trump every month has gone up in the polls, right?
Uh-huh.
And their only talking point is, at least we're not that guy. At least we're not the guy making Americans happy. At least we're not the guy closing the border. At least we're not the guy getting inflation under control. At least we're not the guy that shut down 6 wars. At least we're not the guy that's putting pressure on Jerome Powell to lower rates so that everybody and every business in America, including the federal government, can pay their bills with a little bit of breathing room. At least we're not that guy, right? That's what they're really saying.
Yeah, it's absurd. And I don't want to get in their way, frankly. Let them keep doing what they're doing. Let them have Mamdani as the New York City, candidate here, just a flat out and out communist. It's going to give such a stark. I mean, that contrast is going to become even more stark over the next year or two. Let's get back, take the midterms, ensure that the Trump agenda can continue to advance, so that all Americans can thrive. I mean, it's just fascinating to me how he just keeps winning over and over again. All these trade deals now, the amount of capital that's coming in and being invested into our country, the hundreds of thousands of jobs that will come as a result, the quality of life and standard of living increases for everybody as a result of all the action that is being taken right now. And not to mention, the safety and security that we're going to have by finally having a secure border and just a nation of laws.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you've got a book, Heirs of the Revolution, Our Civic Duty to Restore Our Republic. Tell me what we're going to learn by reading this book.
Well, this book really is something that was stemmed from my experience in public office here in the last 12 years, and then also running for that U.S. Senate seat and going through that experience. I interacted with so many great patriots, along the way, either in Utah or across the country, met some phenomenal, national conservatives, having been endorsed by President Trump and the likes of, Senators Tuberville and Paul and Charlie Kirk and Vivek Ramaswamy and Kerry Lake. I could go on and on. But really, the thesis of the book, Stephen, is that we, with President Trump's victory, and that's very important, without it, we wouldn't have this opportunity. But with his victory, we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to right set our government and to finally get back to what our founders bequeathed us, what they gave us back in 1787. I think, I asked over and over, do you think that we have today the same level of freedoms that were granted in 1787 under the Constitution? And the answer is clearly no. And how do we get that back? Well, this book acts as a roadmap on how to get us back there through those experiences, identifying 6 pillars of restoration. We don't need another revolution per se. We need a restoration, and we need to restore citizenship, the concept of citizenship, which has been, as we said, cheapened and whittled down. We need to restore elections. We need to restore morality in government. We need to restore the concept of ownership, because we've been so heavily taxed and regulated that we almost have just an ownership in name only right now. Restore the family and restore defense. Get rid of the military industrial complex. Stop spending the $22 trillion was the research in the book that we've spent on just NATO since its inception. I mean, it's a phenomenal figure, but there's a clear path and a roadmap on how we can get back. And it was really informed, like I said, through these experiences and in discussions with so many great patriots along the way.
Okay. Wow. I knew we'd spent a lot on NATO. There's been a lot of talk with this Russia-Ukraine war. Like, do we really need NATO anymore? Like, what if we just put that money into rebuilding all of our own countries, our own military stockpiles, making sure that our soldiers are elite killing machines? Mm-hmm. And then if a Hitler pops up, we go do something about it. But to spend so much money just waiting for the next bad guy, I don't know. It seems like a waste of money. But I'm going to put a direct link to Heirs of the Revolution so that people can check that out. If people want to follow you online, Trent, what's the best place I can point them towards?
At Mayor Trent Staggs, at Mayor Staggs, on varying platforms. And I appreciate it. The book has been endorsed by Kash Patel, by our FBI director, by Charlie Kirk, by Kari Lake, by Senator Mike Lee, and many others. And I'm grateful for their endorsements. And just encourage everybody to take a look at this book. It is a rather easy read. It's only about 170 pages. I didn't want it to be a really, really thick book that required hours and hours of reading. So you can consume it or get through it fairly quickly. And I would love to hear what people think about that.
Okay. I'll put those direct links down below. Thanks for joining me for today's news broadcast. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.